I wanted to spend some time talking about this course and why it's designed the way it is. Now, from our last lecture, we heard that really the only requirement to sit the CSA Pro exam is to pay the fee to take the exam. But in reality, if you want to have any chance at all at passing the exam, you're going to have that experience. And also, this course is designed so that it assumes that you have experience. Specifically, you should be a CSA Associate Certified Architect or have the equivalent experience thereof. Most of this course assumes that you're starting with that associate level knowledge. So we're not going to spend any time teaching you the ultimate basics. You can get that information through other courses here on A Cloud Guru. So if you have not yet gone through the CSA Associate content here on A Cloud Guru, I really recommend that you go back and do that, and then come back and carry on with the CSA Pro course. Next, let's take a few moments to look at the real purpose of why AWS has structured the professional exam the way it has. So this is Bloom's taxonomy, and it's just a way of creating a hierarchy of different types of questions or learning or preparation. And ultimately, AWS's objective is to have a whole army of very knowledgeable, very professional folks out there creating AWS architectures that will best help customers. Now, when we first started our journey into AWS, in the associate exam, for example, those were generally geared around the two foundational items of Bloom's taxonomy. That's the understand and the remember. And these are how people generally get started in learning a new concept. It's all about memorization, recalling facts, being able to explain ideas or repeat back ideas that you maybe read about. And that was the focus of the associate exams. And as you can see, there's a pretty wide gap between the understand layer and the create layer that's AWS's ultimate objective. And that gap has to be made up by the professional exams. This is why the professional exams are magnitudes more intense and difficult than the associate exams because they have to make up all that space. And here's where we get into the more advanced topics like the apply and analyze and evaluate, where you'll be presented with a situation where all the answers are good, valid answers, but there's one tiny little word or phrase in the question that would guide you to one specific answer. And so when AWS created the exam and they created the questions, they worded the questions in such a way that they're sometimes very tricky for people to interpret. And that's absolutely on purpose because they want to be sure that you're fulfilling the evaluate and analyze steps of that evolution. Another reason why AWS insists that people have experience before sitting the CSA Pro exam is something known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. It says that the less experience you have, the more highly elevated your self-confidence is about a topic. And in essence, the less you know, the more you think you know. And at some point in time, we probably all fell victim to the Dunning-Kruger effect because we'll learn something new and we think we have pretty good mastery of it. And then we get exposed to a whole nother world, a whole nother layer of complexity of that thing. And we realize how little we actually know. And it's a whole new journey to increase our experience. And so this exam and this course is really designed for those who have significant amounts of AWS experience. We're not going to spend any time on associate level tutorials because I'm assuming that you already know that stuff, or at the very least, you know where to go find that stuff. Now, there's a part of the Dunning-Kruger effect that you may run into yourself as you're preparing for the exam, and it's called the Valley of Despair. And basically what that means is as you learn more, you realize that there is so much more that you need to learn. And I just wanted to let you know that this is very common for CSA Pro students. They come in with a high level of confidence because they passed the associate's level exam, and then they start understanding the breadth and depth of knowledge required, and they kind of fall into this valley of despair. But fear not, if you go through this course and follow my guidance and put in the hard work, you're going to climb out of that valley of despair and you're going to achieve expert knowledge. And in turn, that's going to give you a higher degree of confidence. Now, the exam itself covers several different aspects. First, obviously, it's going to cover your knowledge of AWS, But really, that's just a portion of it. It also covers your ability to contextually reason on certain problems. It also challenges your time management skills. And because the questions are very long and very wordy, it challenges your comprehension skills because it could be one tiny little word in paragraphs of text that would sway you from one answer to another. And it also challenges your ability to cope under pressure. You have that countdown timer at the top of your screen that's always counting down. So in trying to build out this course, what I wanted to do is structure it in such a way that we can try to simulate as many of these things as we can to get you in shape for going into the exam and being comfortable with these uncomfortable situations. In each chapter, we're going to first go over the architectural concepts, and these are generally going to be very generic concepts that apply throughout the lesson. Then we're going to dive into the specific AWS services and capabilities. Now, don't be surprised at first if you see a lot of the same content that maybe was part of an earlier exam prep course. The reality is that there are certain core services with AWS, like S3, EC2, Dynamo. Those are probably always going to be on any sort of certification exam because they're at the real center of AWS functionality. So don't get discouraged if the first couple chapters seem like old news to you. I wanted to be sure that everybody had a good solid baseline of the core services so that when we move into the more compound, complex scenarios later in the course, they will make sense to you because you truly understand the core services. So after stepping through the services and capabilities, then I also include some resources for additional study, like some white papers that you should read or videos that you should watch. Then I try to summarize some of these things in exam tips. What should I know for the exam? One of the challenges of creating a course like this is because we want you to become an expert and not just pass the exam, sometimes there's a divide between what knowledge do I need to pass the exam versus what knowledge would I need in real-world architectural situations. So I've included a section that I call Pro Tips. And these are just some things that I've learned over the years that have helped me in solutions architecture and enterprise architecture roles. And hopefully you can benefit from them too. Then you're going to be presented with 2 domain challenges. And these domain challenges are written in the form of exam questions. And then you're going to have to evaluate those challenges and select the answers that you think are correct. And to ramp up the pressure, we're going to allow you 2 minutes to do that. Why 2 minutes? Because 2 minutes is about the amount of time that you should budget per question on the exam to be sure that you get through the exam in the allotted time. After you've selected your answers, we're going to walk through the challenge, and I'm going to show you how I would dissect and pick apart that question in an exam situation to ultimately find the best answer. And then finally, just to reinforce some of the things that we introduced in the chapter, we're going to have a brief quiz at the end. Now, here are some overall things that I would recommend as you go through this course. First of all, focus on the services and capabilities and what problem they're trying to solve. Don't memorize service limits, prices, version numbers. That's not going to help you. That's not part of the exam. And you should really study to become an expert. That should be your goal, to become an expert at AWS. And don't try to study just to pass the exam. You should find ways to make the AWS content and this content your own. And don't expect that you're just going to learn this stuff through osmosis. You're going to have to be active. You have to take an active role in learning this content. And you should definitely review the supplemental material. I include it here because it's really important. And in a lot of times, it covers material that is directly on the exam. But I'm not covering it in the course because it already exists in a white paper, for example. And if you choose to ignore the supplemental material, I think you're going to be missing out on a lot. And that goes back to what I had said initially about a holistic preparation plan. A lot of these things have to come together to allow you to have enough confidence and enough knowledge to pass that exam. And finally, I would strongly recommend going through another course here on A Cloud Guru. It's the AWS Certification Preparation Guide. And it's prepared by one of our instructors, Matthias, who is an excellent instructor. And he walks you through a very structured way of approaching exam questions that I think is very useful for anyone taking a standardized test.